Hello everyone, I am Upasana Kashyap. On the occasion of International Museums Day, I will speak on the topic Modern Visualization and Diversity in Museums. The idea of modern visualization has lodged in us on what we see, what we cannot see, and what we should see, classifying objects as beautiful and ugly or desirable and offensive based on preferences influenced by cultural, political, social, religious, and racial settings. This discriminatory behavior separates what can be showcased to a larger mass of the population and what gets left behind, hiding away the lives and experiences of people and making them invisible. Such discrimination against certain individuals or groups of people is usually acted out by an authority claiming power either over a majority of the population, taking away the visibility of the history and culture of the communities discriminated against. This process chiefly dwells on aesthetics at the core of politics and how anti-aesthetics brings about a collective of the undesirable and unpreferred aspects, choosing and eliminating to create a final result, giving a specific authority enough power to decide on what the audience looks at and doesn't. Such classification create an erasure and disregard of the creative process and experiences of these discriminated artists and craftspeople. Museums are mediums of displaying objects of art, history, and culture, allowing accessibility to mass population through the spaces of exhibition, connecting, separating, sequencing, and grouping an array of approved objects, which form a general perception and understanding of the exhibits. The carefully curated objects with the corresponding exhibiting spaces allow visitors to experience culture based on the contents and the sequencing of the objects, bringing up the discourse of how the accessibility and visibility of what is being presented decides on what will be taken back by the visitors that belong to any gender identity, religious or ethnic background, or disability. Institutionalizing inclusivity in museums can not just provide educational opportunities but bring about social justice by questioning how sophisticated and adapt our ideas of diversity are and how these issues are to be tackled through proper understanding of the space of the museum, its location, and the audience it engages with. Discrimination in the visibility of cultures through the objects and exhibits in public and cultural institutions such as in museums have been found to make ethnically diverse people feel unwelcomed in such a space that does not recognize their history by disregarding the arts and objects of their community. We can usually recognize such an outlook by collecting data of the people that visit the museums, their purpose of the visit, and their remarks and feedbacks. It questions the foundation of modern visualization in museums by deconstructing the ideas of visibility by bringing forth an amalgamation of objects of culture that were once considered to be unimportant as they were not part of the major ethnic or religious population of a geographical area. Such actions help the audience in feeling valued while experiencing a segment of their and other people's history and culture, providing them representation and recognition. Therefore, it is necessary for museums to maintain their relevance by expanding their reach beyond an affluent audience and exhibits that reflect the history and culture of just one or two majority communities. The most common feature in many Indian state museums can be said to be the abundant display of sculptures from the early to medieval times that usually consist of Brahminical gods and goddesses, saints, heavenly figures of apsaras and gandharvas. Such a large display of a related group of objects can separate itself from the archaeological and art historical prospects and into a hindering idea of what the museum, its patrons, and the government itself wants the visitors to see and learn about. But to expand their reach, museums have to ensure that visitors of all demographics see themselves reflected and represented in through these exhibits. Then there are the elements of the visitor's experience, such as whether an institution is wheelchair accessible, or whether food and refreshments are allowed, whether they have seats for resting, availability of the information and reference guides to the exhibits in all major languages of that area, braille guides and hearing devices for the disabled, and human support. Another big example of a visible element is the question of the diverse staff that the museum hires, which is not only an issue of public relations but to make the museums into cultural and social spaces, reflecting the authorities' values on pluralistic communities and their approach to the needs of these said communities. But it becomes difficult to share the inclusive message if the ones it is being shared to cannot listen, which is why the museum will have to be taken to them with the easiest and most accessible option, which is the internet, by setting up museum websites that are interactive and engage the audience with a good share of quizzes and online viewing, web pages devoted to accessible programs and services, or audiovisual digital tours, or by setting up social media accounts where the audience can be given the knowledge on the art and objects of the museum, while also taking feedback from a larger community of users, which would have not been possible otherwise in the real world. Such a process demystifies the museum to the larger population, but also goes hand in hand to present and recognize the objects of diverse communities, breaking away the constraints and limitations of a traditional museum space and giving voices to the subaltern and discriminated spheres of society. Thank you.